Today we are looking at a fresh twist on something definitively old school. The LS3 speaker from Musical Fidelity is a two-way stand mount whose backstory goes all the way back to the 1970s. And as always, we'll be assessing Musical Fidelity's LS3 via a couple of side-by-side comparisons, and we will be using music you'd read about on Resident Advisor, on Consequence of Sound, and The Quietus.
This episode is brought to you by T+A, makers of the Solitaire P headphones. Click the link in the show notes for more information.
So the LS3 is a portless design, it's a sealed box, and its compact dimensions might mean for once that this loudspeaker could work as a proper bookshelf speaker. Because time has told us that bookshelf speakers usually require placement on stands to sit away from the front wall. That's the wall behind me. You can see the LS3 behind me. Now, Musical Fidelity offers a bespoke open frame stand for the LS3 but I don't have a pair, at least not yet. So in their stead, I am using the solid Steel SS6, whose top plate is a perfect fit for the width of the LS3 front baffle, but it's a bit too deep for the LS3 very shallow cabinet. Now, setting the LS3 apart from its immediate competition is a long and reasonably complicated backstory. So the first models date back to the 1970s when the BBC designed them for use in outside broadcast vans. And I'll put a link to the BBC's original white paper in the description box below. But the brief really was for the LS3 to be good at near-field listening in small rooms. And the focus was on the accurate reproduction of the human voice, and low bass was not on the agenda. So once the BBC had come up with their design, LS3 production was licensed to a range of British loudspeaker manufacturers who could make the speaker according to the BBC's very stringent specifications. So we're talking Rogers, Spender, Chartwell, Harbath and Kef, who made the drivers that went into all variants. And those drivers were an 11cm Bextrine mid-bass driver and a 1.9cm Mylar dome tweeter. And then in the late 90s, Kef discontinued the LS3's driver production, by which time this speaker had become a bit of a cult favourite amongst audiophiles, especially in the UK. So did that mean that we'd have to wave bye-bye to the LS3 Well, not quite, because Sterling Broadcast picked up a fresh BBC licence for LS3 production in 2005, but they used CS and ScanSpeak drivers and then reworked their crossover to make those drivers work. And then 10 years later, Falcon Acoustics became a BBC licensee, but they had a chap called Malcolm Jones as a technical design consultant. And Jones had worked on the original Kef driver design and manufacturing. And it would be remiss of me not to mention Rogers and Graham Audio, who also now make LS3 speaker designs. And I'll drop a bunch of links into the description box below for those who demand a more thorough retelling of this story, which this video could never be. And that's because our focus today is the Musical Fidelity LS3 and it's one of the many, and I gotta say many, new products coming to market since Projects Heinz Lichtenegger bought the company in 2018. And Lichtenegger has also resurrected the A1 integrated amp, which arrived at my house alongside the LS3 because they have been designed to work copacetically with one another, or so I'm told. It's also worth pointing out that this is my first exposure to a pair of LS3 and basically because I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. But Musical Fidelity have told me via email that its LS3 is not officially licensed by the BBC, but that it has been built to the original BBC spec. So it uses a 12mm birch ply cabinet, just like the original. It uses an 11cm Beckstream mid-bass driver, just like the original, and it uses a 1.9cm Mylar dome tweeter, just like the original. On the back panel sit a single set of binding posts, again, just like the original. Although I think there was a bi-wireable version of the LS3 made back in the 90s, but I'm a bit hazy on that. If you know about it, let us know in the comment section below. But don't be put off by the 82.5 dB sensitivity rating, because the LS3 nominal impedance of 15 ohms, just like the original, makes these LS3 I guess, an easy-ish load to drive. Although in reality, the Musical Fidelity speakers need an extra 20% of volume level from the Marantz Model M1 compared to the Monitor Audio Studio 89. I've got a review of the Studio 89 in the works, that'll be coming in a few weeks. However, I think an old school speaker like the LS3 deserves an old school hi-fi system. So to the A1 amplifier, I added a Shanling ET3 CD transport and an iFi Go Bar Kensei USB dongle DAC because the Shanling has a USB output. And just like the mini Marantz amplifier, it has an AirPlay streaming input to which I sent Roon streams. And those Roon streams came from a Tidal playlist that contained songs by Boren und der Club of Gore, Neil Young and Pearl Jam, Craig Finn, The Smile, Parliament, Father John Misty, Lana Del Rey, Dry Cleaning, and then some Julian Cope and Beth Orton. Now I've mentioned Roon streaming, and Roon are the sponsors of this video. So I've got a Roon Nucleus 1. It used to be over here. Now it's over my left shoulder, just under the degritter, you can see to the right of the right-hand speaker. And that's the Roon core, which is essentially the Roon server. And then inside that Roon core is a solid-state hard drive, and on that hard drive is around 3 terabytes of FLAC grips, which I stream to, I guess, yeah, Roon endpoints in my hi-fi system. And so in this case, that has been the Shanling ET3 CD player, but also the Marantz Model M1. And both of those happen to be AirPlay endpoints, but it could be Roon-ready endpoints, it could be Chromecast endpoints, it could be Sonos endpoints, it could be Squeezebox endpoints. I have a pair of KEF LSX2 LT in the kitchen, Roon can stream to those, and I have a pair of PSB Alpha IQ now upstairs in my bedroom, Roon can stream to those. So I can stream all over the house from that one box, and that one box also integrates the Tidal streaming from which I stream my playlist I make for each of these videos. So it's kind of like an all-in-one streaming solution. I say all of this not only because Roon is sponsoring this video, but because people have asked me, like on a more basic level, what does Roon do? So I hope that this little sponsored segment works for you. Oh yeah, I should mention the price, shouldn't I? This pair of LS3 from Musical Fidelity sells for €2,500 a pair, which puts them price-wise right next to the Monitor Audio Studio 89. Now I think that the LS3 is a richer sounding speaker than the Monitor Audio, where instrumental layers aren't quite so cleanly separated. And perhaps as a result of that, the soundstage on the Beth Orton track isn't quite as tall. I say Beth Orton track, I'm pretty sure that the late great Andy Weatherall had a significant input into the production of that track. And the LS3 also deliver a more laid back and relaxed take on Neil Young and Pearl Jam's quite epic actually, I Am the Ocean. Although I'm not sure that you want laid back and relaxed with that track, but there you go. But that laid back sort of intimacy turns into an advantage when listening to the doom jazz of Bohren und der Club of Gore. And compared to the monitor audio speaker, the LS35A pulls less of the finer detail from the dry cleaning track. Now maybe that's because the LS35A's uppermost treble lacks the extension and air of the ultra-modern monitor audio. Or maybe it's because the Studio 89 uses an AMT tweeter. I don't know, that's for loudspeaker designers to tell us. However, there is a slight lift in the lower treble on the LS35A, one that lends a kind of a crisper upper lip to vocals. So that crispness also puts more gravel in Craig Finn's throat, and it makes TV dialogue that little bit more intelligible. Not a huge amount, but just a little bit more. And it also puts more sizzle into the electric guitars used by Julian Cope's early 90s band, which for me recalls the Sonus Faber Lumina 2. But that thought is based on fallible audio memory. It is not a side-by-side comparison. However, I do remember the Sonus Faber as even crisper up top, but leaner in the mid-bass than the Musical Fidelity. And whilst we're talking about bass, the LS35A are far more rolled off in the bottom than the Studio 89. So remember how I said that low bass wasn't on the menu? Musical Fidelity rates its LS35A as 3 dB down, and get this, 80 Hertz. So when we ask, do they need a sub? I would answer, if a bear eats the Pope and then shits in the woods, is the poop Catholic? And running without a subwoofer, the low end that does show up on the LS35A does so with a certain snap and lightness of touch, I guess you'd call it. But they need a sub more than any other speaker that I've had here in the past couple of years. And in thinking about speakers from the past couple of years, I pulled the GoldenEar BRX from my storage shelf. And those BRX don't cry out for a subwoofer as much as the LS35A, which I found tends to disappear more cleanly than the BRX to leave more of a sort of wall of sound, as if the music were detached from the loudspeakers. Now that could be a result of the LS35A's portless design, or it could be my room, or it could be both, I don't know. Let us not forget that the sound we get is the interface between the speaker and the room. Now, I like the look of the LS35A more than the BRX, which in turn is a more impactful and dynamic sounding loudspeaker. And like the monitor audio, the BRX will please anyone looking for a certain sense of clinical accuracy from the sound. I don't mean ultra clinical, but I just mean more clinical than the LS35A. Because when I played New Order's Movement, I noticed that the LS35A sounded a little fuzzier at the edges, but they offered, I guess, what you'd call a more tonally holistic, satisfying experience. Is that pretentious? That might be a bit pretentious, right? But I would say that I think the Studio 89 and the BRX are more technically capable speakers than the LS35A. And I think the Musical Fidelity is for someone who doesn't want the GoldenEars or the monitor audio's speckless, clean sound. They are for someone who prioritizes mid-range richness and a certain kind of lower treble sheen over outright detail retrieval, which I think provides an important counterbalance to the numerous Class D or switching amplifiers now dominating the entry-level space that can lean towards that speckless, clean sound. So for example, the Marantz Model M1 I think is a better fit for the LS35A than the two other sort of Black Beauty speakers. And that's fortuitous because the Marantz's software engine makes subwoofer integration a bit easier than using the A1's full range preamplifier outputs. And I'll have more to say about the A1 later in the year because a 60-degree operating temperature on the heatsink top plate I don't think is conducive to summer weather like we're experiencing now. Now, I made this video with the full knowledge that LS3 fans are a very spirited bunch, and you don't have to throw a stone very far on the internet before you'll hit someone claiming that some super rare edition of the LS3 is the best sounding version. However, getting a used pair in good condition with original drivers will probably set you back more than Musical Fidelity is asking here. And it'll also be more of a hassle to get that original pair because, in my experience, supply levels of certain used products, and in fact probably all used products, tends to swing wildly from territory to territory. And this is why I don't talk about used gear very often, because what might be easily available in Germany for 900 euros might be near impossible to get in South America or Australia, even for twice or three times the money. So this new production LS3 is available everywhere pretty much, and for the same price globally. And it comes with a 2-year warranty, which you won't get when buying a used pair. Anyway, I can definitely see what the fuss is all about here with the LS3 and I guess Musical Fidelity does too, which is why they have made them. But as always, the market will decide their long-term viability. But if you've got a small listening room, I implore you to go and audition a pair. They really are very, very lovely indeed. Anyway, if you like this video, you know what to do, and subscribe to this channel if you like what we do here in general. Patreon is available for superfans who want to buy me or cameraman Olaf a cup of coffee to say thanks for this video, and thank you ever so much for watching. Pausing for some construction noise and pausing for the doorbell. What timing?
You want to go down? We're waiting for you.
Ich warte auf Felix. Danke. Er kommt gleich. Vielen Dank. Ciao, ciao.